Today we're looking at the Book of Gaub, a system-neutral book full of spooky spells, magic items, monsters, and a few other things. I backed this book back in 2021, and I'm not sure why, but when it finally arrived, I really bounced off of it. I think the writing style initially annoyed me. Despite it being really evocative and baroque, I just didn't like it. Anyway, I picked it up a few months ago, and I don't know what the hell was wrong with me because this book is great. This book is from the school of RPG magic more interested in scary, dangerous, and costly magic. The closest magic it reminds me of is the magic spells in Call of Cthulhu, which can be powerful, but very few don't have some kind of cost associated with them. On top of the magic, there are 20 monsters and a good handful of adventure hooks. Both the adventure hooks and monsters also have to do with spells found in the book, which means they are actually attempting to create story seeds with some of the weird and abstract spells you have here. I think that deserves props because I have several Bohemian RPG products that are more interested in strange ideas and crazy art that don't even try to explain how you might use them. Which, you know, is fine and has value in itself, but makes it harder to recommend since they may make for great inspiration. But if you have terminal GM brain, you'll find inspiration staring at your ceiling at night, and sometimes you're looking for something more concrete to complement that inspiration. Anyway, back to the magic. The spells are divided in 7 sections, all under a different finger of Gaub, that represent essentially a type of magic per digit. If you're somebody who likes more narrative, flavorful, and costly magic in your games, this is a fantastic book to pick up. If you're running games where that loosey-goosey kind of magic doesn't really work for the player's tactical builds or anything like that, I still think this book has a lot of value to you across several genres of games. The way I'll be using this book primarily is as the catalyst of storylines and in the arsenal of antagonists. Some of the spells here are really useful for players, but they can be incredibly specific or just not worth the cost compared to some other abilities they may already have, depending on what system you're using this with. For example, let us look at the spell Roblet. Mark your sigil on an object or on the skin of your target. The next time the target or anyone carrying the object leaves a location familiar to them, they must save or immediately become lost until the sigil is no longer on their person. Maps become unreadable, and simple directions will make no sense. If they make a conscious decision as to which direction they wish to move in, they will instead find that they move the same distance in another random direction. Now, I could see that being pretty useful, and honestly, players would find that very fun because it feels like quite the little amusing, terrorizing spell, but I think it works much better being used on the players. Imagine that sigil being put in their backpack, or maybe inside their pocket, or stitched, in the lining of their coat, and they keep getting inexplicably lost. Or maybe they end up somewhere they don't want to be, but somebody does. Maybe they don't get into that much trouble with it before finding the unfamiliar sigil and dismantling it, but then that just opens up a mystery of who planted this malevolent symbol on them and why. While reading, I didn't find myself wondering how cool or interesting these would be in the hands of the players like I often read with spells or magic items, but what stories could be told when used against them or characters they care about. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some that I think many characters wouldn't mind getting their hands on, such as Obasceration. Hold up needle and thread made from a drawing pin and old bookbinding material. Needle and thread will fly from your hand towards the victim. The victim must save to avoid getting their mouth stitched. The process is painful, and the victim is silenced until the stitches are removed. That's pretty fucked up. But I could absolutely see some, more evil witch or warlock characters wanting to get their hands on that. I could see that being very useful if you, who knows, if it's a very fast way of using the spell, if it's something that you can do in, one round. Maybe if you get caught by somebody, like a guard about to, raise the alarm, you just immediately silence them. It's very dark, but most of the stuff you're going to find in here is like that. Now, the spells certainly are the star of the show, but I wouldn't sleep on the magical paraphernalia either. There is a treasure trove of alluring and aberrant items here sure to tempt any discerning patron, such as a disappearing coin that comes and goes, but always appears when you need it most. Or, perhaps the rendered fat of a hanged criminal is more to your liking, said to soothe any of your aches and pains, but it's kind of unfortunate that you can't shake the feeling of being watched whenever the lid is off. Or, how about your heart? Beating it alive in a lockbox, the knife you used to take it out now in its place in your chest. Why you would want this is not totally clear to me, but I'm not here to judge. Of course, magic isn't without its quibbles, and that is why you're provided with 100 magical catastrophes. If you're a fan of dungeon crawl classics or just any system where magic can go wrong somewhat regularly, there's a lot to pull from here. Some are downright inspired with the sorcerer in question being shunted into the nearest flame, and they'll stay alive as long as the flame that traps them drinks oxygen. Or you might get the obsessive compulsion to dig and dig and dig and dig. There's also some really fantastic adventure hooks in the back that I think you could easily use for both OSR or darker fantasy games, or more games like Call of Cthulhu and other horror investigation games of that ilk. I'll read out the Bright Young Thing adventure hook for you. A rising star has graced the Department of Speculative Theology at Wonderbeck University. Despite the scholars' tender age, they seem to be acquiring knowledge far beyond their few years of research and study. Of course, the scholar is gaining their learning through supernatural means. They are tracking down scholars and learned people at other institutions, learning everything they can about them, casting Magdalenity on them, and eating their shed skin to gain their experience, expertise, and memories. They must be exposed before this ploy allows them to gain tenure, or a variety of other unearned academic accolades. I find it very funny. Like, I know what they mean by that in that one, where like, oh, if they gain tenure, they'll gain power in terms of like, you know, now the establishment is behind them. I do love that's not, we have to stop this person before they keep murdering more people. It's, we must not let them corrupt the academic institution that they are a part of. That must be upheld at the highest point. And there are 18 other adventure hooks alongside that one, so there is absolutely no lack of variety if you're needing inspiration for any kind of games you want to do with these spells. Next, I want to talk about the monsters, because I think the 20 you can find here are both really creative and creepy, but also gives you quite a bit of information on them so that you can have a better idea of how to play them. On top of this, there are also the basic stats, such as their hit dice, armor, and abilities. I'm going to read out the page on the Agawilt to give you an idea of what to expect. The feeling of being followed, faces glimpsed in trees, and holes in the ground. The hot, sick gut fear of knowing at any moment everything you've lived for is going to be pulled out from under you. The Agawilt rises from these primal lizard brain fears, badly rendered through our simian brains. An uncanny shape changer, it blends in the background as twisted trees, fleshy scarecrows, leering gargoyles, and indecipherable tombstones. All of its forms are hideous and wrong, and it works to make its environment just as unsettling. It feeds from fear, its preferred morsel the death rattle of those scared to death. Its natural form is a looming, lanky thing, somewhere between a deathcap mushroom and a long mosquito, but it rarely reverts to the shape unless surprised. Its wants are to consume screams, to maim, isolate, and restrict its victims one by one, watching from a safe distance, to create hunting grounds. The means? The Agawilt is a master of creating environmental traps, and its hunting grounds will be filled with pits, snares, nooses, and the occasional rusted bear trap harvested from its victims. It may even have encouraged the growth of entangling weeds and thorn brushes. When a victim is unable to resist, it will move in, assume a frightening form, and snap their victim's neck. In terms of omens, the environment being slightly off. Dangerously placed hunter's traps, copious burrs and snares, and pained shouts. In Egowilt, you must trap the Agawilt into one of its own traps, then snap its pencil-thin neck with your bare hands. As it expires, inhale its final misty exhalation or bottle it. Inhaling its last breath graces you with sublime chemical lobotomy for 1 week, nullifying what might stimulate or affect your emotions like fear, or pain, or hunger, or rejection, or love. At last, you will be delivered from the grip of emotion and feel nothing, finally free for a week. That's just so great for these kind of more high concept monsters. There's some more higher concept ones in here than just that one, but I wanted to give one that I think was a good all around solid monster that, you know, you get its motivations, you have a general idea with its hit dice and that sort of thing, that you know how strong it is somewhat. And it also gives you the way you can set that up, you know, like that can be either an adventure in itself of, you know, what's killing people, or, you know, it could be one of those things where it's like, we need to get to, you know, X location. We need to get back to the town where it's safe. But the fastest way is through this land that the locals call the Cursed Lands, or the Broken Lands, or something, you know, where it's like, fuck, okay, it is faster and we need to get there for whatever reason, you know, maybe to bring back a message or just get to a safer place than where we are now. So if we don't want to take the long way around, we have to go through that place, and that in itself can be a whole session, or maybe a few of being hunted, or dealing with whatever weird things are there. And one thing I think that's cool about this that it does not say, but I think would be interesting, is that I feel like a creature like this would bring in perhaps more brutish, more base monsters as well. Hellhounds, or, you know, things of that nature that might also feed on either fear or maybe some like the the magical runoff from this creature, or any number of things where if you want it to be more than just this one creature, or it can just be that, you might have just essentially kind of this horrid dead zone that you have to go through. But that's pretty much everything I want to cover. I know this is a shorter video, but when it comes to these books that are primarily just a ton of flavor and ideas, I try not to give too much away so that you can experience the contents for yourself unspoiled. One thing I'll mention for newer GMs is obviously do not be afraid of changing what you need to make these work or fit in your games. Some of the numbers may need to be changed to match power levels, or if you want to make them extra scary or work with whatever crazy ideas you have. It is system neutral, so it's not built with any one system in mind. I'm a really big fan of this book, and I wish I had looked at it again sooner with fresher eyes, because it was just collecting dust on my shelf for a very long time. In fact, far too long. And flipping through it has given me so many great ideas of how I can inflict some pretty awful things onto my players. I definitely recommend the Book of Gaub, or Gaub. I'm not totally sure how you pronounce it, but I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to say Gaub. But you can either get it in either physical, if you're able to get it, or just grab in the PDF just to scroll through for ideas if you're running horror games or games with horror elements that you want to incorporate this into. As always, a huge thanks to my patrons for supporting me. You guys are wonderful. You allow me to do this. August and September should be some pretty big video months, so hopefully my productivity does not get melted by the sweltering humidity that we're having here. So I'm hoping I can just keep working on a few of the things that I'm doing. We have some pretty good stuff coming out soon, so I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good one, and stay safe out there.